Everybody, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Y'all ready for Halloween and winter and the holidays? And are you getting depressed yet? I notice the older I get, the less I like the cold. I don't know what that's about. Right, Roger? Yeah. Absolutely. So, I hope you're feeling good. What are we going to talk about today? I want to talk to you about resistance and how just sort of states of being and how we can get into a state of resistance and it can cause us problems. Now, one of the things that I've had to do as I've been going through this process of change and transformation and deconstruction and all this stuff that's been going on within me, all this craziness. Some people just say midlife crisis. Some people are hoping it's just a phase that I'll grow out of. Some people think I'm totally deceived by the devil, or who knows what people think. But as I was going through this process, anytime you're changing deeply held beliefs, you go through periods of confusion because there are certain things that you think are absolutely true and absolutely right and solid, and you build your life on them, and they work. And then somewhere along the way it doesn't work, or you get exposed to new information, or you have some divine intervention or something that turns your apple cart over, right? And while you're going through that process, there's a process of confusion or disorientation, and a lot of people get they just lose heart in that process, and a lot of people just give up. They just throw everything out, baby out with the bathwater and whatever else. And so as I have been reflecting this week back on my own personal journey and experience in all of this, the one thing that has been an anchor to me more than anything else has been my own personal experiences. And I've been really fortunate for whatever reason. Even in my teenage years, to some degree, I can think of 3 or 4 incidents. My teenage years, and then in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, I just had a lot of supernatural experience. I've just had a lot of experience with the paranormal and with the supernatural. I was talking to one of the people that I work with in my other life, and this individual is very,
Other life could mean totally two things in this service.
Yeah. No. In like a couple weeks ago, in my other role. That's funny. I was talking to this guy that was agnostic, and I was just sharing some of the scientific experiments that have been done with the heart and with DNA and with energy, and he's like, "You're just blowing my mind right now." And I was using science, so he's like, "You're just blowing my mind right now. I can't deal. I'm having an existential crisis." So he said, "I've always been interested in the paranormal or the supernatural." And he says, and I just said, for whatever reason, throughout my life, I've had lots of experience with that. And so he says, well, what kind of things? And I said, well, pick an area that you want to know about, and I've probably had experience with it. Because I wanted to be careful what I shared. And even to myself, I'm thinking there's some things there's no way I could share with you because you would think I was crazy. If I told you, you wouldn't even believe me. And so there's not even any point, right? You would just write it off. And so my point is that I have always been aware that that there are other layers and dimensions of reality that exist that we can tap into to experience all kinds of stuff, good and bad, blessing and curses, right? So that's the one thing, and I wonder about some people who maybe grew up in fundamentalist backgrounds in churches that didn't experience the supernatural on a regular basis, or didn't talk about it, or talked about it but couldn't demonstrate it. Like, how do they survive? Like, what's the point? Like, I realized just reflecting back that because I had a lot of these experiences, I would just tolerate some of the thought forms that would come with Christianity because I thought that was just, you had to take the good with the bad. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then the other thing that's really tragic is you can begin to think that the experience is the result of the thought form, instead of realizing the thought form really does not have a lot to do with the experience. Perfect example. How many of you that were, crazy, wild, charismatic Christians, somebody would, quote unquote, get saved, they would meet Jesus, whatever the case may be, and within a week they're operating in miracles or signs and wonders. I was talking to a guy yesterday he's going through his own transitions, and before he got into the Christian thing. This guy was witnessing to him, and this guy falls on the floor, and he's paralyzed for some reason. He can't move. He's telling his friend, apparently he could speak, but he couldn't move his, from the neck down or something. And he was telling his friend, I can't move. And this guy didn't know God from anything. He said, I just heard this voice inside me that said, kneel down, put your hands on him, and talk to me. And so he's like, I don't know what to do. So he kneels down. He just says, okay, God, I don't know how to talk to you. This guy loves you, serves you. He doesn't deserve this. You need to take this away. You can give this to me, which I thought that's a dangerous prayer. But whatever. And he said all of a sudden he felt like this electrical power just go through his whole body, and felt like this thing leave his friend when that surge of power hit him, and all of a sudden his friend could move and he was fine. He went to the doctor later, and there was some spinal thing or something that he had, but that got his attention, right? So here's a guy that's not even quote unquote saved, not in steeped in all the stuff you have to do in order to be able to heal or all that other stuff, and yet he's accessing a power and an ability that is beyond normal power and ability. Right? So we see that all the time, people that can do that. But somehow, I think, we think, well, the result is connected to the thought form. The result is connected to the belief. If you believe these things, then these things should be what happens to you. And I think what I found out is that there really is no connection. That's a deception that we get bogged down in, where we think we have to have these certain thought forms, right, in order to tap into these other dimensions of reality. So then the question becomes, if it's not the thought form, if it's not the creed, if it's not the belief, then what is it that we were tapping into? Is that a fair question? And how can you do that more, right? And so, again, reflecting back, I noticed that there are different seasons in my life where I've operated in just a flow. And what I mean by flow is there was just an ease to life. There was just a guidance to life, not a striving, not a working, trying to make. And I would have these seasons of synchronicities, where I would be thinking about someone and they would call, or I would have an intention about something and it would happen, or I would pray for something and it would come to pass, or any of that stuff, right? And so there's just this ease and this flow and these synchronicities to life, and it's just like, oh my God, I finally arrived and this is wonderful. And then what we do is we take whatever we're thinking at the time and we make that the thing. We say, oh, it's because I did this, and this, or I got this new revelation, or whatever, and that's causing all this stuff. But then invariably, I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but invariably, I'd be in these incredible seasons of synchronicity and flow and ease and grace and peace, and then all of a sudden something would happen in my life, and it'd be like, oh my God, like where did it all go? Like it just dried up. Like where'd it go? Like the heavens closed, the fountain dried up. What the hell? Anybody ever been there? And then life is hard and complicated, and you're striving and all that stuff, right? And so, what gives? And so, one of the things I think that it's safe to say about my own journey, and one of the things that I think I've learned, is that what really happens is not so much what's going on out here. What really happens is the level of mental and emotional state and what's going on in here. And what shifts is not what's out there. What shifts is something that happens in here. And so if we can learn what are the things that keep the connection, what are the things that keep the flow going, and if we can control those because they're going on inside of us, then maybe even in the midst of those harder times and struggle times, we can stay in that flow, and maybe those times will be resolved more quickly and more easily for us. And so then we have to ask, what's the difference? What's the difference? So I just started looking at saying, what's the difference in the state of being? What's the difference in the feeling? What's the difference in, and then coupling it with what little bit of science I know about physics in the brain and stuff like that. So you ready to go there? So one of the keys to struggle in life is resistance. Any level of resistance, because when you're in that flow, you're not resisting. And the deception is you feel comfortable and you feel at peace and you've let go of resistance because everything's going good out here. You don't have anything to struggle with. You don't have anything to fight with. Everything's going good. So you're just like, and the more you can be like relaxed, the more it flows until something happens, and you could feel yourself getting worked up, right? And you can feel yourself and we get stuck in these loops. And a lot of our problem is that we're so mental, we're so cognitive and intellectual. And when we are thinking, how many of you have ever figured out your brain isn't that smart? Like, I just hate to tell you, but you just aren't as smart as you think you are when you're operating up here. Smartest people in the world, I mean, they can sit down, do great did great in school, they can do great on, tests, IQ tests, whatever the case may be. They can figure out math problems, but then when it comes to life, they're struggling just as much as the next person. And they're running scenarios through their head, and they're running solutions through their head, and they're working on this thing, and then out of all that mental activity, they try something, and I thought it was going to go like this, but it didn't go like this. Anybody relate to that? And so then, when that doesn't work, what do? We start thinking more. Or let's do it this way. What about self-improvement? This is the worst. So, because people don't, people that are just living in flow states don't think about self-improvement that much. Think about it. They don't think about how can I go to, what book do I, what message do I need to watch on YouTube? What book do I need to read? What seminar do I need to go to? How can I improve myself? All that kind of stuff, right? And so, and yet that's an industry. So we make an industry out of that. So we tell you, okay, you have to do these things, because if you don't do these things, then you quit feeding the beast financially, right? Make sense? And so there are a lot of systems that are set up, marketing systems that are set up to give you just enough knowledge to let you know if you get to this next level, then you'll really have the knowledge. Like, I followed a spiritual teacher like that. I'd have these conferences and was going to share secrets and mysteries and then talk about all the great stuff he was experiencing, and then never really give you stuff. And then the next thing you know, if you come to the next conference, or if you pay for mentoring, or if you do all this stuff. And so it's like it's the carrot on the stick. They just keep dragging you on to the next level so that they keep getting your money, right? But the problem becomes, so what are some of the things we know? Well, okay, I know I should think more positively. I know I should, whatever the case may be, right? How many of you have ever tried positive thinking? So positive thinking is still a mental activity, and actually what you do, anytime you feel like you have to improve, what you do is create resistance within yourself. Anything that I feel like I have to improve about myself, and I try to do it on the mental plane, I create something that creates resistance within myself, because I create a pattern now that's contrary to the pattern I was in before. Does that make sense? So if I'm a negative thinker, and I'm going to think positively, and so I try to think positively, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? I'm not against thinking positively. I think much better to think positively than negatively. Don't get me wrong, but how many of you from experience, you try to do that, and then you feel resistance? Or when we say, if you can have faith that that something will change in your life, could be anything, faith for a financial miracle, faith for a healing miracle, whatever the case may be, and you say, okay, I'm going to believe that, and you say, okay, I believe that I'm healed. I've got to believe that it's already reality. So mentally you start saying, I believe that I'm healed, or mentally you start saying, I believe that, God's going to provide for me, or that I'm walking in the prosperity and walking in abundance. And you're still getting calls from the bill collectors, or there's still pain in your body. Guess what happens? Your brain up here can't process some of that, because it knows, you can't trick yourself. You can fool a lot of people, but you can't fool yourself, and your brain knows. And so you're sitting there saying, I'm healed, I'm healed, I'm healed, and you're getting all this sensory input and information that says, no, you're sick, you're sick, you're sick. Like, you can't convince yourself that you are. So then what you do is you're just creating more resistance and more struggle and more war. And what you're doing is you're creating more brainwaves. Or not creating more brainwaves, but you're staying in a certain brainwave pattern that disconnects you, that is not the state you need to be in to access the things that you're looking for in life. Because it's locking you into this three-dimensional world, if you will. So just basic. You can look at basic brainwave patterns, and there are certain brainwave patterns that you go into that help you focus on what's going on out here. But now when you go to sleep at night and you dream, you're not focused on what's out here, so what's going on? You're in a completely different brainwave pattern. But you're still experiencing something if you're dreaming, right? Have you ever had a dream you woke up from? Have you ever had a really bad dream and you woke up from it and it was so real and you thought, was that a dream? Wasn't that a dream? That was so terrible. Am I just trying to convince myself that it was a dream? And how many of you have ever been in a situation where maybe something so terrible happened, you were shocked and you're like, am I dreaming? Surely I'm dreaming. Surely I'm going to wake up from this. I mean, I'm serious. Like, if you haven't experienced that, okay, I have. And so, but the thing is, then what we begin to realize is that there is this very thin veil or narrow line between what we experience in consciousness in this 3D world and what we experience in consciousness on another plane and another level that comes from within. Make sense? And a lot of it has to do with brainwave patterns. So they've done all kinds of experiments. If you haven't looked at heart math, I've looked at heart math for years. Did my master's thesis on their concepts about 10, 11 years ago. I think, Julie, didn't you get trained or something with heart math, or a little bit? Robbie works with it a lot. It's this biofeedback thing, and they talk about this thing called heart coherence. And so one of the things that's really interesting is that they're discovering, you have a neural network in your heart and also in your gut. There's somebody won a Nobel Prize like within the last few years talking about the brain in your gut. It's a book that you can get by the guy who wrote it. And one of the things they're finding out, like they're figuring out ways to tap into that nervous system to use it as a lie detector. And they're saying it's the most accurate lie detector test that they can have because of the responses that will go on when you're telling a lie. Watch. And it's a stress response. So when you lie, you put yourself in a state of stress. So sometimes when you're trying to believe something that isn't really happening, all you're doing is stressing yourself out more and taxing yourself more. Make sense? So anyway, going back to heart math, people, what they've done is they've looked at what they call this heart coherence model. Now here's what happens when you're in heart coherence, when you're in the right state of mind, where you're connecting and contacting your heart and you're feeling good, okay? And your stress response, your fight or flight response is dialed down, and you're in this place of balance and equilibrium within yourself. They found out there's all kinds of phenomenal benefits that go on with that. I know I sound like a broken record because I've talked about it before, but you begin to release all kinds of chemicals with your immune system that literally turn on. So what they did was they were able to take a lot of your immune system actually exists in your mouth. You have, I can't remember the chemical that's there, but it's part of the immune system in your saliva. So they could take your saliva and they can test it to see how many of these guys are swimming around in there. All right? So what they did was they had people activate states of anger or states of stress or states of resistance. And when they were in those states of resistance, what they found out was that there were either fewer or none at all of those chemicals in the saliva. And so what they found out was that when you get stressed or when you get angry, you're literally turning off your own immune system and making yourself more susceptible to sickness. So they said, well, what states activate it? And so what they found out was that the two most powerful states were compassion and gratefulness. Compassion and gratitude. And what they found out was if you could put yourself in a state of gratitude, the exact opposite would happen. You would turn on those, I wish I could remember what they were called. I wasn't prepared to go into all of the detail, but I'm just feeling led to do that. Turned on these chemicals that made your immune system stronger. They have also discovered chemicals that repair your DNA, that are an anti-aging, telomerase, I think is what they're called. Telomeres, that is an anti-aging process that goes on that repairs the ends of your DNA so that they don't fray and begin to break apart. Because one of the reasons that you age is the DNA begins to fray, kind of like a shoelace that loses the thing. You know what I'm saying? Begins to come apart, and the telomeres actually can repair that. And so what they found out was the same thing. When you're in a stressful place, you're in a stress response, guess what happens? Your DNA starts breaking down more. You actually start aging more quickly. When you're in a state of gratitude, when you're in a state of compassion, the telomeres are flowing more, and your DNA is being repaired. And so here's the point. When you feel good inside, you're doing all kinds of things to help repair even physical processes that are in your body. And when you don't feel good inside, you're actually sending destructive chemicals into your body that is making you age faster and making you more susceptible to sickness and not as able to heal. That's all coming from states of being, right? So if you can be in this place of what they call heart coherence, which is let's say it this way, you're less in your head and more in your heart. So here's our problem. When we are overthinking things, whether we are trying to solve a problem, whether we are trying to fix ourselves, whether we are focused on a problem that's out here, the more this engine goes, the less heart coherence you actually have. Now here's another problem that we have. If we start examining ourselves, so I'm moving away just as a like the Western model of change is change your thinking, everything else will line up. Even in psychotherapy, they think, if you can change the way you're thinking about something, you can change the way you're feeling about something. That's true to a point. But the problem is the more I examine and think about my thinking, guess what I'm doing? The more I think about my thinking, the more I'm up in my head, and the less I'm in a place of heart coherence. And we really need to start asking ourselves the question, instead of how do you think about that, we need to start asking ourselves the question, how do you feel about that? What do you feel about that? Because that's what tells you what's really going on at a heart level. And the first key to all of it, the first key to raising your vibration, all right, let's do it this way. Let me back up. Can I back up a little bit? So let's talk about, from certain theorists in quantum physics tell us that there are other dimensions of reality that we can't access. Now, that's just a given for me. I don't need that proven to me scientifically. That is just a given for me. There are other dimensions of reality. There are other worlds that exist beyond this 3D world, right? We all know that. And those worlds are populated by other beings, other sentient beings with intelligence. But if they're not grounded in this 3D world, they exist in a different state than animals and humans and plants and rocks, right? So then how do we begin to think about those other places and those other beings? If we can understand, if we can appreciate the fact that at least as far as what we can tap into as human beings, everything that we know or have the ability to access that exists as energy and consciousness. So that in these other dimensions, there are things that are being held in patterns of energy and packages, if you will, or blocks of information. Right? And actually, I think there are higher dimensions of well-being, let's just put it that way, and I think there are lower dimensions of densities that are not well-being in this world of polarity of light and darkness in which we live. Is that okay? And those higher dimensions of well-being, it's like God exists in all of it. All of it. But the divine nature becomes diluted the more that it moves away from the light and the more that it comes down to these heavier levels of density where we're at in this physical 3D world. Is that okay? So if you think about the divine nature, the divine characteristics of love, power, wisdom, all the good stuff, right? Joy, peace. Paul, in the Bible, the Apostle Paul says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, right? Faithfulness, self-mastery, all the things that we are looking for in life. I mean, if you could bottle that up, if you could just take the first three, love, joy, and peace, and you could bottle it up and put it in a bottle and say, if you drink this, you will, within 2 hours, you'll be experiencing bliss. Right? Would you make some money off of that? And I'm not talking about, illegal substances. Maybe we should do it this way. If you took your inner state, let's do it this way. If you took your baseline state of being and you could bottle it up and sell it to other people, would they want to buy it? If you could take the way that you live with yourself and inside yourself and bottle it up and give it to other people, would they want to purchase it? And if not, then I have this question for you. What's preventing you from changing that? Why aren't you interested in improving that? And if you could experience on a more consistent basis states of compassion, states of gratefulness, states of love, states of joy and bliss and peace, would you want to do that? So what if I told you the pathway to that is not in your head? It's not in your thinking. It's not in thinking more positively or trying to believe something, because it's not in the thought form. It doesn't exist at that level of vibration and energy. And most people, 99% of the population in this planet is stuck at that vibration, held in that pattern, and held in that level of energy. And very few people in their life do anything to transcend that. And a lot of the self-improvement, a lot of therapy that people go to, I mean, I'm a counselor, right? But I'm going to tell you right now, therapy is for better or for worse. And I hate to tell you this, a lot depends on the therapist that you get. Because if they don't really know what they're doing, they're going to mess you up. And I got to tell you, most of them don't. At least I can only speak for counselors. Like people in the counseling, right? Am I right? I'm looking at one, but anyway, for affirmation, you just come out ill-equipped. You do. And with all this stuff that just keeps people locked into that same level of patterning and thinking. And if all you ever do is go and talk about your problems, then guess what? You're keeping all your attention focused on your problem. You're just locking yourself even more into that pattern. So what if the key then is to be able to get out of that state of consciousness altogether? To leave that land of reasoning and thinking and problem solving and complaining and whatever we do up here, and open up your heart in a different way that allows you to access a different feeling, a different state of being, and actually access a different pattern of experience in your brainwaves that then opens the door to those other dimensions, that opens the door to those other realms, opens your consciousness to those places where you can then receive downloads of information, you can receive downloads of well-being, you can receive downloads of bliss, downloads of supernatural healing, downloads of perceptions, precognitions, and perceptions about the future. What if it, because we look at people and we think, okay, these people are fake. Let's just take fortune tellers, any kind of fortune teller, even if they call themselves a prophet in the church. They're still fortune telling. They are. I mean, if I were to look at Valerie and say, the Spirit of God is telling me that you are, and they do it so generally, that they used to just drive me nuts, that the season that you've been in of struggle is coming to an end. Like, who can't relate to that? Like, who isn't struggling with something? And God is getting ready to do a new thing in your life, and he's going to take you to the next level. Next level of what? About what? And there's abundance out there waiting for you, and it's going to come to you, and God just wants you to know that he loves you, right? Now, what have I really said? Nothing. A bunch of nothing. I've been so general, she could connect it to anything, right? But here's the thing. If I'm telling her something's going to change, I'm telling her that blessing or fortune is coming into her life, how am I not fortune telling? I'm just use a different semantic. Because, fortune telling's evil. Prophecy is good. Fortune telling comes from the devil. Prophecy comes from the Spirit of God. All I did was change a label to describe the same principle and operation. Why did I do that? I have no idea. Where am I going with this? So we look at people in these realms that can operate in this stuff, and we think, this person is especially gifted in this area, and we discount ourselves and say, well, I can't do that. Now, there are people that will be more gifted in sight and perception and healing and any of the paranormal stuff, just like in normal stuff. Most of us can run, but some of us can run faster than others. Most of us can see, but some have better eyesight than others. Most of us can hear, but have better hearing than others. You see what I'm saying? But we all, in the physical, if we're healthy, have the same basic physical capabilities and capacities. And the same thing is true of any spiritual capacity that you want. It's in you. It's in you to perceive and intuit the future. It's in you to get these downloads that I'm talking about of bliss and stuff. It's in you to manifest the energy of God, the divine power to bring healing, to work miracles, to change things on the physical plane. You all have that ability within you. And it's largely, to a large degree, untapped. And it's untapped because our way of being is these mental loops that we get stuck in. And so people go to churches, or they go to workshops, or they go to whatever, and all we do is feed them more information, like I'm doing now, that can keep you stuck in that same loop. Right? So what if it's more about feeling good? What if it's more about well-being? The scripture says every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father of lights, in whom there is no variance or shadow of turning. So what if there is a presence and a goodness and a potential for life that exists in a stream of energy and information that is coming from God, that is flowing into your life every moment of every day? And how do you know you came into contact with it? You know you came into contact with it because your feeling is orienting to that level. And whatever your state of being is what you're going to meet. Like the universe is going to bring you your match. That's particularly in those realms. So you can have the thought form of Christianity, or whatever religion. You can have the thought form of religion where you've checked all the boxes and you've got all the behavioral patterns and all that stuff, but it's just the stuff of thought. Doesn't mean you're accessing anything divine, right? But if your heart is open and you're at a place of grace and ease and rest and authenticity and trust, i.e., you begin to let go of all your resistance. You begin to let go of all those patterns of resistance and problem solving and fixing yourself and fixing other people and forcing something to happen. And you just begin to kind of let go and relax and move into a place of grace and ease and peace. And pretty soon you start tapping into that. And then your heart opens with compassion. Your heart opens with gratefulness, the feeling of it, not the concept of it, the actual experience of it. And what happens? You start tuning into those other realms. You start training your own being to hold a different pattern than what you've been holding. And you begin to open up access to information that comes to you differently One of the most tortured, twisted, misquoted verses in all the Bible is in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, where Paul says, eye has not seen, ear has not heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man, those things that God has prepared for those who love him. And we say, that's about heaven. I remember as a little boy, so when grandparents died, where'd they go? They went to heaven. Well, what's heaven like? Well, we don't know, son. I mean, the Baptists were really good, God bless them, at quoting this verse. We don't know, son, because eye has not seen, ear has not heard, neither has it entered the heart of man the things that God has prepared for those that love him. Because we know we just got to struggle through life and swim through this crap and just try to hold on and hang on, and he that endures till the end shall be saved. And God set up some kind of cosmic test to see if you could do it, I guess. I don't know what we thought. Like, see if you get the information right and check all the boxes and then you're good. I mean, really, that's right? And then, but he's got a mansion in glory for you or whatever. So everything's kind of put off till then, right? But the next part of that verse, eye has not seen, ear has not heard, neither has it entered the heart of man, those things that God has prepared for those who love him. The next part of that verse says, but he has revealed them to us by his Spirit. What is the Spirit? It is a stream of thought and information. He talks about the mind of the Spirit. He talks about tapping into the mind of the Spirit. So what's he saying? He's saying the things of God, the things that the good and perfect gift that is coming down from God, who is the source of everything, right? That's coming to you. He said it does not come by way of normal experience and reason. It doesn't enter in through your physical eyes, or it's not about just information that you hear. It's not about these thought processes that gets it down in the heart. It's about changing your vibration, dialing into that frequency. And when you dial into that frequency, you get downloads. Now, here's the question. So oftentimes you'll get a download of good and perfect things that are going to come in your life, but you're experiencing with your physical eyes and hearing with your physical ears and experiencing at this level of reality a different experience that's contrary to the download that you're getting. Of course you are, because what you're experiencing at this level of 3D reality is the result of the pattern of energy that you yourself have been locked into. So if you're focused on the problem and resistance and stress, guess what life is going to meet you with? More problems, more resistance, and more stress. You may get reprieves, but pretty soon you're back in that loop again. Make sense? So now if I begin to change that and something else begins to come to me, of course it's going to be different. Thank God if it wasn't different, you wouldn't want it. But what happens is we're so used to believing what happens here first that we can't believe in something else. Are you tracking with me? So the first step in all of this is to invite you to begin to accept yourself and all your problems and all your things you don't like about yourself and all your whatever completely and totally accept and love yourself the way you are. In other words, sometimes to lower resistance, you have to lower your expectations of yourself. I wish I was more like this. I wish I was more like that. I wish I could change this. I wish I could do what Aaron's talking about and just access those states. Okay, give it to me, and I want to be doing it by next Friday. And then what happens? Oh, you build it up, and then by next Friday, nothing changes. Now you have more resistance. So the way out of this is not working a solution. The way out of it actually is letting go. Letting go and accepting, this is my reality. This is who I am right now. This is where I am right now. This is what's going on in my life right now. And I said this a couple weeks ago, but I said, if you can say, even though, listen to the language, even though I have negative thinking, I totally and completely love and accept myself. Even though I have anxiety, I totally and completely love and accept myself. Even though I have hate in my heart right now for this person, I totally love and accept myself. If you can start doing that, you bring a different energy to that problem, you let go of resistance. And guess what? It's just funny how it works. You're starting to bring compassion. And if you can get to the point where you can realize whatever stress I'm going through, whatever problem I'm going through is here to teach me something. There is a gift wrapped up in this mess somewhere. Then if you can learn to have appreciation even for the mess, guess what? Now you're in a place of gratefulness instead of in a place of resistance. Really simple stuff. Like this stuff is not complex. It's not hard. It's really simple little steps of acceptance and grace and rest and relaxing. And just, if you just take 4 minutes a day, that's what the heart math people said. It only takes 4 minutes to experience a chemical change in your body. But if you can sit for 4 minutes a day and be thankful, if you can sit for 4 minutes a day in a place of acceptance, if you can find that place of feeling good for just 4 minutes a day, and you can sit in that place for 4 minutes a day, you're doing yourself some good, and you're training yourself to be in a different place. You're accessing a different level of consciousness. But see, you can turn it around also. So here's where I'll close. Even though I don't have the answer to all the questions people are asking me right now about where are we going with this thing and what are we doing and what's this going to look like, and I don't know. Well, you're the leader. You should know. Well, why are you doing this if you don't know? But if I can relax and say, even though I don't have a clue sometimes, I totally and completely love and accept myself. It just brings such a different energy. But now, flip it around. What about the person that's coming to you with resistance? Even though you're angry with me right now, I totally, completely love and accept you. What would happen? Like, what kind of energy would that bring? Even if you don't say it to them verbally, but you think it in your head, even though you're whacked out crazy right now. Come on, you all know you have that crazy person in your life. And if you haven't met them yet, they're coming. It's not because of your vibration or your match or any of that. It's like there are viruses out there are germs out there, and there are crazy people out there. There are people in their evolutionary journey, they were somebody's house cat in their last life. So if they don't quite get this human experience yet, give them some grace. Have some grace and some understanding with them. They can't help it that they were Felix in the last life. Right? But if we could just understand that and say, okay. Or like I heard one spiritual teacher say, they're just very unripe fruit on the tree of life. Very green fruit. You get it? But if I can bring that, and watch this. Even though is a term of acceptance, but is a term of resistance. I'm really stressed out right now, and I don't know where I'm going, but I totally and completely love and accept myself. You're being a total ass right now, but I totally, completely love and accept you. You feel the difference? See, the power of words. Even though I'm stressed out right now, I totally love and accept myself. I totally love and accept myself. Even though you're being an ass, I totally love and accept you. Now, you may not be feeling it, but even just minor incremental changes begins to introduce a different energy, a different state of being, and begins to dial you in more towards those higher levels where the Father of Lights is sending every good and perfect gift down towards you. And the more you can bring yourself into that state of existence, and the more you can hold it, and the more you can live there, the more flow will start to come into your life. The more supernatural experiences will start to come into your life. The more downloads you'll begin to get by just staying in that place, the more you access it. And then if we get a company of people, be aware of the energy that you're bringing into a community. Be aware of the energy you're bringing into a meeting. Be aware of the energy you're bringing when you come here. Be aware of the energy you're bringing when you go into a family situation, or the energy that you're bringing when you go into a workplace. Just be aware of it, right? And any little bit of goodness that you can offer, even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just a drop of goodness. You know, a couple weeks ago I suggested, if you have that coworker at work, that person that you just keep running through your mind, I hate that person, I don't want to see that person, they ruin my day. Feel how much resistance you're in when you're doing that. And I said, why don't you go buy them like their favorite cup of Starbucks or something and just take it to them and totally freak them out. And I heard from 3 people that week. I did. 3 of them. And they were watching online and they said, I was getting ready for work. One of them was the day before. I was getting ready for bed and all I could think about was how I had to go deal with that person. And so I put on your message and I heard you say, that person at work? And I was exactly what I was thinking about. So I got up the next morning and I bought him a cup of coffee. Then one person said that she was in the morning getting ready, listening to me, thinking about the person she had to go deal with. And so in both of these cases, I can only think of the 2, but I think there was a third one as well. And the one in the morning, she says, I went and I got her a Starbucks and I gave it to her and I was really, acted like I was grateful to see her. And I said, how did it work? How did it change things? She says, well, and I think this person is our supervisor, right? She's like, my God, she started doing things that I asked her to do without complaining. Like it was always World War III to get her to, and so what did it do? It brought grace and ease. So I'm telling you, little things, a little thing like changing your energy, a little thing like a cup of coffee can have a massive impact on the situation that you're facing. It doesn't have to be these big things that you do. Last story I'll tell, and then I need to stop. But I want to give you the example. There've been a number of times in meetings where the Spirit of God has spoken to me that there was someone in the meeting that was suicidal. Or there were times that I would call people out and give them a word, maybe not so different from what I was saying there with Valerie. And then I would hear from that person, I was thinking about killing myself. I decided to come to church. And, this thing happened. And I'm not in that place anymore. And I remember there was a lady who was going through a lot. She had a lot to face and overcome in her life, and she had a lot to be upset about when she would rehearse her history. And there's just some people, for whatever reason, that life deals them more blows than some of the rest of us, right? And she was in a very dark, suicidal place. And she had decided that day, she had a plan, she knew how she was going to carry it out. She had decided that this particular Sunday was the day that she was going to take her life. And she knew me. She wasn't part of our church, but she knew who I was, more likely. Like I'd never even really met her, but she knew about me, heard about me from some family members and stuff. And she said, well, last thing I'm going to try, before I do that, I'm going to go to Aaron's church. And she said, I came into the meeting and I sat there and I listened to you and I kept thinking there would be something that would make me feel better. I kept thinking there'd be something that would give me a reason to not do this. And it was just awful. She's telling me this, right? I'm like, batting my eyes, blink, blink, blink. She says, I just walked out of there and I didn't feel better at all. And so she'd already decided she was going to do it in the evening. So she says, I went home. I think, if I remember right, she went home. She was going to write out her suicide note. And we used to have people that would, when we'd have visitors, we had people that would volunteer on a Sunday to just take them a gift bag, some cookies, some fresh baked cookies, and say, hey, we're glad you came. And she said, I went home and I was sitting there and I heard the doorbell ring and I opened the door and there was this lovely couple or lady, I don't remember who it was. I think it was a couple, and they came in and they brought these cookies and they were really glad that I came, and I could feel the love and the gratitude coming from them. And it was like the moment that they did that, this wave came over me and it just broke that thing. And this was about a week later. She was telling me about this, and she said, and I haven't had one single thought about wanting to kill myself since then. So you just have no idea the power of just a small incremental change in your state of being. So the solution isn't trying to think it through some more and come up with a plan and anticipate what's coming so that you're prepared. The solution is realizing you're not alone in this. You have a lot of support from heaven. You have a lot of support from God. You probably have support from people that you haven't even tapped into yet. And if you just relax and trust that and say, I'm going to do my best to feel good. I'm going to do my best to come from an energy of love and acceptance instead of from an energy of resistance. I'm going to do my best to come from an energy of trust instead of an energy of whatever. You will be amazed. And you may not ever even know. Like the couple that took the cookies, they didn't know. They didn't know. And if she hadn't told us, we wouldn't know. Right? So how many times has some small thing that you've done been a game changer for somebody else and you didn't even know? So relax, take it easy, go listen to that Eagles song. maybe 8 or 9 or 10 times till you can actually feel like maybe you can just take it easy, right? God bless you. Have a great day. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming.